provide quick, reliable information to hundreds of thousands of people via Twitter, but his work during the revolution has also been picked up by major news outlets, such as the New York Times and Time Magazine, to reach even more people. He has been named the most connected Twitter user in the Middle East. As of last night, he had almost 148,000 followers. I'm sure he will have at least a few more by the end of this event, considering how wired Northwestern students are. We are thrilled to have him with us tonight. He'll be talking for about 30 minutes, and then we'll open the floor for questions for also about 30 minutes. And please join me in welcoming Sultan.
I don't think we need a mic. I'd like to speak a bit louder. Everyone's okay in the back? So, my name is Sultan Al-Qasimi. I'm from the UAE. I studied in France and then the UK. I worked in a family business, and I started an arts foundation. And I was writing even before the Arab uprisings, which we don't call Arab Spring, because it's an Orientalist term, but we refer to it as the Arab uprisings. So even before the Arab uprisings, we were, I was kind of writing, trying to share information from the Arab world. I come from the UAE, as I said, a country that's very rich in diverse in demographics, which gives me a lot of opportunity to interact with people from all over the world. In any case, I'm here to talk to you a little bit about what happened in the Arab uprisings, about social media, and about the way forward, where we're going to be. Hopefully, we'll try to understand a little bit by the end of this hour. Let me just give you a background of the Arab world. It's quite an interesting part of the world. There's about 330 million people from the Arab world. It's a huge area that stretches from the Atlantic all the way to the Indian Ocean. It has, unfortunately, one of the highest unemployment rates in the world. Across the board, unemployment in the Arab world is about 25%, but in reality it's much more. The reason is some countries don't count women as unemployed, because they don't count women in general. In some countries, unemployment is kind of, they call it disguised employment. So you have a lot of millions and millions of young people who have government stipends and they consider them to be employed when they're not. So even in Saudi Arabia, you have 32% unemployment rate. This is rich Saudi Arabia, 32% unemployment under 25. So in fact, the World Bank and the UNDP, the United Nations Development Program, says that you have to create 100 million jobs in the next 10 years to keep the high unemployment rates where they are, or to improve them. To keep unemployment at 25%, you need 100 million jobs. It just shows you how bad it is. One of the senior economists of the United Nations, Iraqi, if I'm not mistaken, called Ali Al-Qadri, in fact, wrote a study in which he found out that Arab economies had shrunk in between 1971 and 2000. So we're talking about, even though the numbers look like they're going bigger, in fact, he found that there was a 2.8% regression in the economies. So yes, you're making a few more dollars, but in fact, because of inflation, you're actually poorer than you were in the 70s and in the 80s. So all of that really gives you the background of what happened with the Arab uprisings. The fact that you have corruption, graft, mismanagement of the economy, lack of democracy, lack of human rights, police states, martial law across the region. So all of these factors kind of screamed revolution is coming, but nobody paid attention to it. And even when these governments tried to reform, it was more of a window dressing rather than real reform. Let's talk a little bit about what the social media landscape looks like. By 2000, about 2005 or 2006, there was an estimated to be about 26 million Arab internet users. So that was about 7% of the total Arab population. Then Facebook. So in 2010, there were just under 12 million Facebook users. So 2010, February, about 12 million. So there's a huge jump in the number of Facebook and social media users. By February 2012, this is just after Mubarak fell, we went up to 21 million Facebook users, almost double 21 million Facebook users in the Arab world by the time Mubarak had fell. By November 2011, so just exactly a year ago, we had 36 million Facebook users. And we'll come back to why Facebook is an interesting issue here. So 36 million users. The latest numbers available on the number of Facebook users in the Arab world came out in June 2012, and all these numbers are available if you search for them. Arab Social Media Report, ASMR. It's produced by the Dubai School of Government. So the latest numbers that came out, June 2012, 45 million Facebook users in the Arab world. That's 35 million more than 2 years ago. Talking about a huge growth, one of the fastest growing languages on Facebook and even on Twitter. Twitter, by the way, the numbers are much less for a number of reasons, but usually the numbers that we have was that there were 2 million around the revolutions or the uprisings, and about 6 million of which 1.5 are active. So these are in general what the numbers are. Actually, there's a little secret. Many Arabs in the Gulf and in the Arab world have 2 accounts. You want to know why? One is their official account, and one is their account for when they flirt. So you usually have a secret account. But in general, you know, these are the numbers we look at. Now social media was used heavily even before the Arab uprisings. And it was used, as we said, a tool for underground kind of connecting with each other. In some countries, men and women can't mix. In some countries, people who have political ideas can't mix. In most countries, you have martial law. Do you know what martial law is? I hope you don't. Martial law basically means that no more than 4 people can gather in one place without being thrown in jail for no good reason. So that's what martial law means. So prior to 2011, you had millions of Arabs on social media finding each other, connecting with each other, and not only that, it was actually used as a tool of information. In 2006, actually it was a very seminal year. We had a couple of major incidents. One was the Israeli aggression, very appropriate to talk about it today, isn't it? Israeli aggression on southern Lebanon, in which we saw a young Lebanese artist called Zaina Khalil. She had a blog, and she was smack in the middle of the action. She had a blog called Beirut Update. And that was the blog that CNN and BBC and all the newspapers referred to. So she was one of the first Arabs to use social media to disseminate information. That was one of the, not just in the Arab world, but all over the world. Another incident took place also in 2006 when one of the videos exposing police brutality in Egypt found its way to an Egyptian activist, and for some reason I became friends with all these people over the last couple of years, called Wael Abbas. Wael Abbas, I don't know if you follow him on Twitter, fascinating guy, but very X-rated, you know, above 18, I think, his tweets. But he was also a respected journalist. And Wael Abbas got hold of this video that shows horrific police brutality, in which the police were literally sodomizing this Egyptian guy for no reason with a stick and kind of applauding to each other. So Wael got this video, uploaded the video onto YouTube, and you know what happened? YouTube took it down. It was so violent that it broke YouTube's regulations and abuse. And then all these activists and journalists wrote to YouTube, and YouTube kind of reinstated the video a few days later. And that video was very important in starting the movement of bringing attention, physical proof almost, or documented proof of police brutality in Egypt. So that's another use of social media. A lot of people say social media was used in the Arab uprisings for the first time. I mean, there's a nod also to Iran. Iran in 2009 used in the Green Movement, the uprising in Iran, they used social media to so much so, and even though Twitter was young then, that Clinton's office called Twitter and asked them to delay maintenance because the Iranians on the street were using it to connect to each other, and Twitter was just about to have maintenance, and so they kind of held back on maintenance. So there's been quite a lot of use of social media in the last few years. Now, so the Arab Springs started how? You had a number of reasons. Obviously, we talked about the economic reasons, the graft, the police brutality. But in 2010, in June 6th, a young Egyptian guy, 28-year-old, nothing special really, just a regular guy who just carried on with his life. Techie, name was Khalid Saeed. He was from Alexandria in northern Egypt. He went about his day going to the cyber cafe or internet cafe. And two police officers followed him there because they had proof or they had suspicions that he had filmed them exchanging drugs, doing something that they shouldn't be doing. And so they followed him and dragged him out of the cafe, took him to the next building, beat him to a pulp so bad that he lost his face. If you search, I don't recommend doing this, but if you search online, you will see how bad the pictures. He actually died within an hour. And so Egyptians felt helpless. There's this law against them. You can't gather. You can't protest. And in fact, there's a very famous protest in Egypt called the April 6th movement today that was born in 2008. There was this town in Mahalla, about 60 miles north of Cairo, in which an uprising started. And this gave birth to this Egyptian movement, a very secular youth movement, proletariat movement. So Egyptians knew that they couldn't protest, so they gathered online. And then what happened was that a number of Egyptians, including Wael Ghanem and two other admins, went online and decided that the way to protest was to call on Egyptians to stand on the Corniche in Alexandria and elsewhere, a few yards apart, not talking to each other, because if they did interact, that means they're together and they can be arrested. So the idea was wear black and stand in front of the Corniche a few yards from each other, and this is one of the most dignified protests.